Hi, my name is Jeff, and today I'm going to show you how I cut my fret slots. So what I've got here is a little miter box that I kind of made myself. It doesn't look very pretty, but it is square and it does work. And I've got myself my maple fingerboard, which still shows some burn marks from the table saw, but that's okay. They'll be all sanded out. They're not very deep. It's just sort of burn marks, and they will be sanded out when I radius this board. Okay, so I've started cutting. I've got 3 slots cut already. So this is sort of like the poor man's fret slot cutting apparatus. This is my fret saw, and you can certainly go and buy a fret saw from Stu Mac. But this is only my second build, and I thought that after I do my first build, it was just to satisfy my curiosity. I didn't think I was going to build on any mass scale, so I wasn't going to invest 30, 40, 50 bucks into a fret saw, so I kind of made one. And what it is just a regular old back saw. But the kerf, meaning the slot that it cuts, was too wide. So what I did was I kind of took a Dremel tool, and I just kind of ran it down, back and forth on both sides of the slot, both sides of the saw, and I got it down to the point where it was narrow enough to make a kerf that would take a fret. In fact, the first one I went too far and I made it too narrow, and the fret wouldn't go down into it, so I had to take another one and made a new fret saw out of it. Okay, all right. Putting in the I don't know if you see these little markings here or not, but there's little pencil markings here. Basically, what I did was I measured all my measurements for fret distances off a Les Paul. So make sure the end of this is square, cutting it with a table saw or a miter saw. You've got a nice square 90 degree. And all I did was I put this butt tight against the nut on a Les Paul, and then I just marked the center of each fret along here. And I didn't mark on both sides, just kind of marked on one side only. I don't know if you can see that or not, but anyway. And then, supposing this thing here is square enough, then all I have to do is just kind of line that up. Just line up that mark with my saw, and you make very, very, very gentle, slow cuts just to kind of get it started. Okay, kind of rocking the saw a little bit that way and that way just to kind of get it cutting on both sides and through the middle. And again, this little miter saw here, I kind of made it. It's very square, but these little blocks here are quite tight together and better than just one of those regular saws where the slot could be quite wide and your saw could flop around a little bit. It might not be very square. So I kind of put my saw in. I made this myself. I put the saw in and made sure that this was square, and then I just kind of glued these on, these little things here, these little pieces of wood, these little blocks. Just kind of glued them in tight to the saw, and after the glue was dry, just drilled and put in a few nails just to make sure that it holds there. Okay. Now here's a few tips for cutting slots. The saw itself may tend to get caught. It may start off smooth, but it'll get caught. And the wood is very hard, so it tends to catch. So what I do is I just have one of these dollar store candles, okay, and you just kind of, run the saw back and forth across there, and it kind of lubricates the saw blade so it doesn't buck as much. As your slot gets deeper, it tends to buck more, okay? And I kind of made the mistake of cutting it with one of these, which is a coping saw. And it actually cuts quite well. The blade itself is narrow enough, okay, so that the fret slot is almost perfect for a fret. The problem I had was that I started cutting with the back saw, and then I kind of finished with this, but it wasn't completely perpendicular. It kind of, I didn't think I was, but when I looked at it afterwards, the slots themselves were definitely going down at a weird angle. Okay, so I want to make sure that I stay with this thing here. What I do use this for is it just so happens that the width of the blade is almost the same depth as what I want. I have to change things a little bit after when I radius the fretboard, but it's almost the exact same depth. So I just kind of use this as a depth gauge, and I just kind of put that into the slot. Okay, and I'll just bring this up so you can see it a little better. Okay, I just kind of put that into the slot, and just kind of run my finger along the edge there, and just kind of use it as a. And when I have actually cut a tiny little bit, if it just wasn't perfectly flat on the bottom. But there is a danger of getting a weird angle. Okay, you can see the fret saws there. They should be perpendicular. But if you cut too much with that coping saw, these are going to come in on some weird angles. You want that straight. Okay. All right, so that's the poor man's or the economy version of fret slotting. I built a lot of jigs myself. I've made a lot of parts myself. I've made tools myself. And basically necessity is the mother of invention. And yes, you can order all this stuff online. Me being in Canada, ordering stuff from Stumac can get very pricey because you end up paying a lot of exchanges and duties and taxes and things like that. Okay, so anyway, I hope this helps. If you're one of those high-tech professional guys with the fancy schmancy equipment, then that's great. You can go at that and mass produce all the guitars you want. But for someone who's just kind of experimenting and trying to build on their own, hopefully some of these tips might help you out. Okay, take care. My name is Jeff.